What if the most powerful human to ever stalk the Ice Age stepped out of a cave today, stronger than a powerlifter, harder to kill than a grizzly, and carrying DNA that still whispers inside many of us? That isn't a Marvel pitch. It's our own prehistory. Long before skyscrapers and smartphones, a muscular cousin ruled the frost-lashed valleys of Eurasia. We call them Neanderthals, but that label barely hints at how extraordinary they truly were. Tonight we're cracking open the fossil record, prying into fresh genetic clues, and exposing the breathtaking biology that turned these archaic people into near superhumans, then examining the twist of fate that erased their footprints, yet left fragments of their power locked in billions of modern genomes. When the first Neanderthal clans drifted out of the shadows roughly 400,000 years ago, Eurasia was a battlefield of ice, wind, and apex predators. Temperatures swung like a guillotine. Glaciers advanced, retreated, and advanced again, grinding mountains to dust. Herds of woolly mammoths thundered across tundra the size of continents, while cave lions, hyenas, and saber-fangs lurked behind every boulder. Food was bulky, fierce, and armored in fur. Failure meant starvation, or turning into someone else's dinner. In that brutal arena, natural selection didn't just favor toughness, it demanded it. And so Neanderthals reshaped themselves into living battering rams. From a distance, you might have mistaken one for a stocky modern backpacker, until you noticed the proportions. The average Neanderthal male stood around 5'6", the women only a hair shorter, yet both sexes routinely outweighed contemporary Homo sapiens by 20%. That paradoxical heft came from bones so dense they looked poured from molten iron. A single Neanderthal femur can outweigh 2 of ours. Ribs curved outward like barrel staves, anchored to shoulders that could support the frame of a pickup truck. Their chests weren't just wide, they were deep, leaving space for lungs that gulped 20% more air than ours. Every gram of that biology served a purpose. To drive a hunting style so savage and intimate it still shocks anthropologists. Picture an Ice Age plain at dawn. A mammoth, 11 feet at the shoulder, tosses snow off its tusks. Suddenly, a knot of short, muscular figures explodes from behind a moraine. There's no throwing spears from a safe distance. Neanderthals favored thick ash lances thrust straight into hide and muscle. They closed the gap in seconds, relying on legs built for explosive starts, not marathons. Their broad toes clung to frozen ground. Long, narrow Achilles tendons acted like whipcords, uncoiling power for a sprint rather than storing energy for distance. When the point struck, a Neanderthal's arms, pumped by naturally elevated growth hormones, could drive 2 meters of sharpened wood into a rhino's chest plate. Some researchers calculate an untrained Neanderthal male could bench press roughly 500 pounds. The females, around 350. That's elite-level strength in modern gyms, achieved before breakfast, without a single protein shake. But raw power alone didn't keep them alive. Durability did. Up to 90% of skeletons show severe healed injuries. One elder survived an amputated right arm, a crushed left clavicle, a shattered eye socket that left him half-blind, and ear canals sealed by new bone. Yet he lived long enough for those horrors to knit. Such resilience hints at both extraordinary pain tolerance and tight communal care. Clanmates must have fed, defended, and carried their wounded, forging social bonds as tough as their bones. Even their skin cooperated. Certain Neanderthal gene variants are linked to thicker epidermis and keratin, nature's built-in armor against claws, spears, and sub-zero wind. All that toughness ran hot. Each adult required an Olympic swimmer's calorie haul, somewhere between 4,500 and 6,700 calories per day, just to keep the furnace stoked. Meat answered the call. Isotope analysis of bones shows roughly 70% of a typical diet came from animal protein, more than wolves, rivaling polar bears. They were, biologically speaking, hypercarnivores. Yet chewing wasn't their only trick. Look closely at a Neanderthal skull, and you'll find front teeth worn flat, scratched, and grooved in a pattern rarely seen in our species. Those incisors weren't just for eating, they were vices. Need to hold a hide taut while scoring it? Clamp with your teeth, twisting plant fibers into cord? Bite and pull. Some anthropologists dub those jaws a literal third hand. Strangely, the bite force itself wasn't monstrous. Around 700 newtons, high but hardly crocodilian. The secret lay in jaw width and tooth bulk, leverage over outright pressure. That leverage mattered on bitter nights when sinew cords snapped and fingers numbed. While one hand gripped a stone tool and the other steadied reindeer hide, the mouth made a third anchor point, freeing artisans to craft clothing tight enough to survive blizzards. Imagine the scene inside their limestone shelters when the wind howled and stars glittered like ice splinters outside. A ring of amber firelight flickered across rough-hewn walls, throwing giant shadows as children threaded bone beads onto sinew. The air smelled of pine resin, roasted marrow, and the sharp tang of birch tar glue bubbling in a shell shard near the coals. Sparks leapt upward, briefly illuminating ochre handprints smeared on the ceiling, a gallery of stories meant to outlast the roar of any predator. In one corner, a hunter scraped fat from a mammoth hump, draping ribbons of meat over a rack to smoke. In another, an elder hummed through a reed flute, the low notes weaving with the crackle of kindling. Outside that glowing bubble of warmth, auroras rippled across a black sky. But inside, community melted the chill better than any bearskin. And craft they did. Forget the outdated caricature of dim cavemen grunting in the dark. Neanderthal cranial volume averaged 1,600 cubic centimeters, 30% larger than ours. Size isn't everything, of course, but evidence keeps stacking up. Complex flake technologies, birch tar adhesives distilled over fire, red ochre pigments daubed on cave walls, maybe even rough flute-like bone fragments. Their skulls broadened at the back, ballooning occipital lobes devoted to processing vision, while enormous orbits housed eyes 15% larger than ours. Bigger eyes channel more photons. Under twilight or moonlight, a Neanderthal scout probably saw detail where we'd stumble blind. That edge, paired with a brain tuned to track prey and clanmates in shifting shadows, made nighttime their ally. Yet the very design that made them unstoppable sprinters and close-range killers carried seeds of downfall. Short legs and wide chests guzzled oxygen on long hikes. When ice retreated and herds roamed farther, endurance became king. Enter Homo sapiens, lanky, lighter, sweating through 5-hour persistence hunts, armed with projectiles that killed from 40 meters instead of 4. We didn't have to overpower a mammoth up close. We just had to jog after it until heat and blood loss did the work. Competition wasn't the only blow. Rapid warming events fragmented Neanderthal habitat into isolated pockets. Small groups of potent athletes suddenly found themselves starving on shrinking ecological islands. Genetic data hints their average clan rarely exceeded 40 individuals. Disease could scythe such a network overnight. And then there was intimacy, interbreeding. Far from Hollywood romance, the genetic record suggests occasional, possibly desperate unions. The result? Between 1% and 2% of Neanderthal sequences linger in most non-African populations today. Those fragments still tweak our lives, nudging immune responses, keratin production, even how intensely some of us feel physical pain. But they're whispers now, not roars. Before we close the cave door, pause on a final, startling contrast. Neanderthals were sprinters, yes, but their hearts, figuratively, were marathoners when it came to loyalty. The healed amputees, the toothless elders, kept fed long after they could chew meat. They testify to compassion as robust as muscle. This isn't a story of bloodthirsty brutes. It's a saga of fierce communities who carried each other through a world that tried daily to erase them. So what lessons echo in our own bones? Strength alone couldn't stop an ice age. Speed alone couldn't outrun change. Even a colossal brain couldn't map every future twist. But cooperation, the quiet power of many hands, stamped their legacy into ours. Look at your thumbprint. Odds are a thin spiral of Neanderthal keratin patterns it. Flex your tricep. A gene tweak from an ancient cousin might be lending a subtle edge. We're not copies, but composites. Modern mosaics of triumphs and tragedies played out on frozen steppes. Here's my challenge. Next time you crush a workout personal best, hike a ridge at dusk, or just stare into a winter sky, remember the silent partner in your DNA. Then ask yourself, if unbelievable strength and resilience still ended in extinction, what truly secures humanity's future? Is it raw power or the willingness to adapt together? Drop your thoughts below. Share the Neanderthal trait you'd crave or fear most. And smash that subscribe button if you're hungry for more mysteries etched in bone. The Ice Age is over, but its legends are just getting started.